Our role is really on creating the safe spaces.
Totally.
And that is a huge responsibility in 2025 for you as a coach to really bring people who may not be feeling heard, who may not be feeling represented in the world.
Hi, I'm Jennifer Britton, and welcome to the Coaching Many podcast. I've been on a mission for the last 20 years to expand the coaching conversation to many. Along with my co-host, Evana Valle, we're going to be exploring coaching as it relates to conversations, connection, and change in both personal and professional settings. Coaching Many is about creating empowering and thought-provoking spaces for conversation which strengthen relationships and enhance results. Throughout the Coaching Many podcast, we'll share tools, practices, and approaches to support you in your conversations, one dialogue at a time.
Welcome back, Evana. I can't believe it's Tuesday, which means it's podcast recording day. We are sitting down today for a really important topic for 2025. And whenever you catch this, we're talking today about engagement in group and team coaching or coaching many. So how really do we bring all voices into the room? What are you looking forward to in this conversation today around engagement?
Yeah, for me, and so great to be here, first and foremost, Jen, with you and just continuing this conversation because it's really important, especially in 2025 with what's going on in the world. We know about the stats of burnout and even like the World Economic Forum, 30% of people are actually engaged. So this is really front and center for whether you're a leader, whether you're a mom at the kitchen table, or whether you are a group or team coach, is what are those tools? What are those resources? Yeah. What are the foundational elements in our conversations to support people to engage, right? I think it's really, really foundational.
Well, and behind me, people can see make your own adventure. That's just part of my MO, which is like for everyone, it's going to be different. Like we can't assume that everyone's experience and what it means to engage is the same for each person. As you shared, engagement levels are at their lowest. Those measurements were from 2024. I would not be surprised to see if 2025 stats are even lower than where we were in 2024. Yet as coaches, the heart of our work is we need to meet people where they're at.
Yeah.
There is an assumption that people are engaged because they're showing up. If they aren't engaged, there is no coaching. It's just a conversation, but it's not a coaching conversation to those deeper levels. So I think it's just really interesting as we think about what engagement means and the context, right? Because as group and team coaches, we do acknowledge that every voice is important. We do acknowledge that every voice is different, and it's being able to harness the differences in the room that creates change. It's harnessing the differences that really creates high performance. If everyone is the same, that's a problem.
Yeah.
And in fact, we do need to really celebrate the unique differences that we all bring and the unique perspectives.
Yeah, I want to normalize something too, because when we're talking about coaching and coaching competencies from a group coaching standpoint, they're an extension of our core competencies as a one-on-one coach.
Yes.
Which is different than the team coaching competencies for team coaches. So just want to kind of note that there is that nuance within that. And to your point though, or what I heard from what you were saying, Jen, at least for me, is it's really important for us to really ground in our competencies and who we are as a coach, who we support. And for me, that means like I need to be strong in those foundational elements so that way I can show up and be with the unique needs, the unique people who are in this conversation. Because as much as we could be doing a group coaching program on the same theme, every group is going to have its own intricate complexities, differences, similarities. And I think that's a big skill, or I don't want to quantify saying a big, but I think that's a skill that as a coaching many coach, you really do need to have that awareness of and really have that discernment of what does that look like? What does that taste like? What does that sound like? What does that smell like? in this conversation with this particular cohort. And so when we talk about engagement, you've got a lot of amazing intellectual property on this, but I don't want to just kind of skip over the fact that, and we have to be really present and listening to what is going on in this unique conversation, whether it be week 1, week 3, week 5, week 12, whatever that is.
Absolutely. So let's go into like, what does it mean to engage? And I've just gone to the Oxford Language Dictionary, right? It means to attract or involve or help someone participate or become involved in. And it's a very active process. So as you said, we've got different layers of this. We've got the layer of what is the individual member needing? What is the collective needing? What is the coach bringing? Those are each different levels. If you go back to the notion of the sweet spot, right, which is something I've taken people through for 20 years now, it's really each is a different layer. And together we see what does engagement mean. I think back to 2019 when I introduced the 5 levers of virtual engagement for those that joined us during the pandemic and have effective virtual conversations, really thinking about what are the best vehicles, what are the best ways to bring those voices in the room. Because some people are going to be more kinesthetic, they're going to be more action oriented. Other people are still seeing the world visually. And as much as others will say, oh, but wait, there's no learning styles, the research is enough that we can see that people are have different preferences in terms of perception and engagement with the world. And so we want to acknowledge that, celebrate that, and make sure in the approaches we're bringing to coaching that we are having the integration of the head, the heart, the guts, the hands, the feet. Each one of those is a different doorway. And for those that have joined us for Team Coaching Essentials, we do a whole closure exercise around the head, heart, guts, hands, and feet, because each one of those doorways will provide a different access point for engagement. Each coaching superpower, the way you show up as a coach, has different preferences. The spiral lighthouse coach is going to want to engage differently than the grounded labyrinth coach. The catalytic firecracker coach will engage differently than the creative tool master. And if you're going, but wait, what is she talking about? Then go and take the coaching superpower quiz. We've done lots of episodes on this now. This is one of my pet projects for since 2021, where now we've had thousands of coaches take the coaching superpower team and group coaching superpower quiz, really to help them discern what are their primary, secondary, and tertiary ways of coaching. And I would say as a group and team coach, as a coach of many, you've got to develop the whole range. It's not enough for me to say, oh, I'm a creative tool master, I like to lead like this as a coach. No, we need to build the range, because inclusivity, I'll use that word directly, inclusivity is imperative in our work. If we do not bring everyone along, if we do not include all voices, we are not coaching. Simple.
Well, and back to the heart of the engagement, right? And connecting engagement to the superpowers is really going to your earlier on meeting people where they are. Different people are going to have different needs. And so we, as the coach, need to develop our range, which the superpower quiz does kind of spark some insight to where you are. But more than that, it also sparks to where your growth and your development is as a coach for, again, always in service of your participants. So we've highlighted the superpower quiz, and we're going to share the link. I also want to highlight that you did a great conversation in 2024 through International Coach Week on the 5 ways to engage, which is on our YouTube hub. So we'll add that link, because that's also a great resource for you. Like, what are you talking about? Engage? Because especially with the reality of the disengagement, with the reality that we're still in the world of virtual or hybrid, how can we work with people? And I know in Italy, a lot of the people that I'm now coming into my conversations, they are executives, they are busy, and they don't really want to be in person because their time is our most valuable resource.
Time is money. Absolutely.
Time is money. And so I know in order to really provide the quality of engagement, the quality of what I stand for them, I'm leaning into my virtual facilitation essentials that I took through in the pandemic to support, that engagement, that level of conversation. So I would just want to share that there's a lot of resources available to you when we're talking about these things. And it's also for you to really look at, what does engagement look like to you today? What are you doing to engage? Are you doing somatics like you and I both touched on? Are you thinking about technology and how you can integrate technology? What does it mean? Where are you actually double downing on some of your core coaching skills, listening skills? Are you actually, I want to say this because this is actually coming into a lot of the conversation in our group coaching essentials programs right now. It's like, hold on, but my people, they don't engage with metaphor, Evana. Well, hold on a second, right? We have to be mindful of our biases and meet people where they are, but also allow a new approach, a fresh perspective. And so what are the tools, those creative tools? You're bringing dice into the marketplace, Jen. There's so many different resources. So I'm going to encourage you, when it comes to that engagement idea, also allow yourself to experiment. Don't bring your biases of what you think they want. And I'm going to say that with an asterisk, because oftentimes it's our own discomfort of how things are going to land that are get in the way of actually activating that engagement, going deeper, cultivating those deeper conversations. So it's really important that you, as a coach listening to this, or as a leader, is really be mindful of where does your strength, start, but also what are the needs of your clients, and what is that bridge to where meeting them where they are and where they want to go? What does that bridge look like, and how can you use engagement as a way to do that?
Yeah. Well, let's get really practical, because I think engagement is an absolute essential in a world of compressed time, right? It's like coaches will say, oh, we have an hour, we have an hour and a half. But if you are working with busy professionals, you might get half an hour, 40 minutes, sometimes even. And so engagement really is a way to activate insights, evoke that awareness, as we would say in coaching competencies, in a way that is much more powerful. So to use the example of metaphor, right? We can be listening for metaphor, but we can also create a tableau, which allows people to choose from metaphor. And I think one of our most popular pre-pandemic, one of our most popular videos that existed was something from the Blab era. This is really dating me, but precursor to Facebook Live was something called Blabs. And I did a series of Blabs on using visuals, because in 2014, not 2024, 2014, the whole Conversation Sparker brand started to emerge with the introduction of the Conversation Sparker cards. And those are visual representations of metaphors. So if you think that your people are not going to go into metaphor, maybe think about how are you going to introduce them to some visuals, whether it's physical postcards, whether it's physical photographs in the room, whether it's a Pinterest board, whether it's a collage that you create in Canva. These are all different ways that you can be bringing images that really can spark complete new insights. And I would argue, and this is my current writing, in times of complex change, we need to use those as door openers to new insights. If we try to keep thinking it through, we probably won't. And so being able to do the creative, not just what is the metaphor, but what are people noticing as they look at a tableau, whether it's a visual, or you said, like if it's the dice, really helping people see what it is. I've spent, even in the last, it's only early February 2025, almost every work day of the year so far, 2, 3, even 4 or 5 times a day, we're using dice, we're using numbers, we're using charms. And time again, what do I hear? Oh, that's so interesting. What came up today, right? There is something that is quite unique in terms of the way our brains.
Thank you. That's where I was going to go.
Right? It's all about connectivity. And so these metaphorical door openers are a bridge to connecting ideas, to thinking divergently, What do we need in times of change? We do not need to put on blinders, actually, to really look at great solutions. We need to take off those blinders and think divergently. Now, not everyone is on that bandwagon right now. And part of critical thinking, and I'm going to say this very explicitly, if we want to create populations that are critical thinkers, we are fostering and encouraging lateral thinking. We are encouraging people to get outside of their box and to think in terms of innovation.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to simplify it because I don't have as the extent of, knowledge in this, but I'm just thinking like left brain and right brain, right?
Which don't exist. So let's not do left brain, right brain, because they actually don't exist.
Okay,
that
good.
Is not a good.
But what my point is this though, is we really do need to support the activation of different aspects of who we are. Okay.
Yeah,
so the creative side of ourselves versus the logical side versus the rational. And that goes even with the mind, body, spirit, right? Like in terms of that. So we'll leave so thank you for auto correcting me on that one. But really it's like to think about like, again, where are we limited as leaders, as coaches in the way we are seeing ourselves, our own perspectives, our own biases, and how can we encourage? Again, it's not about forcing anyone down a certain way, but just encourage a thought-provoking question. And this is the magic, and I'm going to share this. The magic of group coaching is as much about the self-discovery, but it's as much about the cross-pollination that happens in that conversation when people are allowed to share their own insights, because insights from one oftentimes ignites and activates insights for others. And I think that's the power really of the engagement. And as I say that, I'm thinking about your 6 layers of connection. So if you're like, what? I want to know more, is how are we activating that connection, amongst the group members, whether it's in the conversation, beyond the conversation, with technology or other.
And I want to hit a pause here because I think what you just said is really an important spotlight, right? Group coaching is not about giving a group content.
Yeah.
It's about creating a pause. It's creating the space for people to look at something, explore something. When I say look at it, they might be hearing it, right? Experiencing it. But it's about having that experience and then having the conversation about it. And I think coaches who are not confident, I've just written an article that'll be coming out soon in the Coaching Tools magazine that I write for. Coaches that are not confident are very quick to fill the space. They're many times very uncomfortable with silence. Yet it's in that silence that group member A is going to say something, which then sparks group member B, which then group member C says, oh yeah, hey, you know what? I love what you both said. And here's another way to look at it, which then creates the generative peer learning. That is what group and team coaching is all about. Let me be clear. And I'm going to be like, let me be clear. Group and team coaching is not about the coach. This is a huge shift from the stance of the one-on-one coach who really, is like, oh, I need to ask a question. As group and team coaches, we need to step back. We need to ensure that there's enough oxygen in the room, that the group is pinging off and building off each other. And so that means we need to step back. We need to let the group do the work. And you've heard me say that for 15 years since the publication of Effective Group Coaching. We need to step back and let the conversation play out. Our role is really on creating the safe spaces. Totally. And that is a huge responsibility in 2025 for you as a coach, to really bring people who may not be feeling heard, who may not be feeling represented in the world.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, and for more on that, we'll just say episode 3 is on that trust, safety, and connection, right? So I'm really hearing like there is a thread line in all of this, right? There's a thread line. And for me, even that space of pause, silence, reflection, we talk about this in Group Coaching Essentials. We give approaches on how to do this. We've touched on even some of them in terms of the metaphor and that creative space, that reflection process.
Yeah.
And it is super, super valuable to know that this is the competencies. Like, we're not creating stuff here. Like, this is building on the foundation of our core competencies as a coach.
Yes.
And brilliantly, you are creating practicality and processes to really support that in a conversation of many. So that space of pause, silence, and reflection looks different. You're absolutely right. It's evolved. It takes it, but I want to just remind and reinforce that these are our competencies. This is not anything new. It looks different. There's a shift in what it looks like in a coaching many conversation with groups. And there's a further shift in how it looks like in team coaching.
Absolutely. And the vehicle to get us there to the shift practically is what are the levers you're pulling, right? So are you using annotate? Are you using chat? Are you bringing voices in different ways? If you're physically in the room, right? Are you using Post-it notes? Are you getting people up and moving? Even in a virtual space, are you activating the somatic layer, right? In mentor coaching, we're talking about this all the time in terms of what aren't you doing as a coach? What aren't you using? Right? That is the range. That is the pointing to this is where I need to keep growing. Because if we're always coaching in the same way, it may not have the greatest impact in a group. Like one-on-one, yeah, it might work, but the diversity in a group is going to be much greater. And the ability of the coach to really get out of their rut, get out of the one way that they coach every time. This is what keeps the work fresh. This is, really, I think, the challenge edge that allows coaches to keep flourishing professionally.
Absolutely. And personally, I can speak to this myself. My evoking awareness, that was where my range has really taken me in the last 10 years, so much so that now it's my secondary superpower. But it took intentionality, it took training, it took development, both as a human, as a coach, even experimentation with my one-on-one clients, with my groups on what does this look like, bringing this somatic layer when it looks in anything, helping people really connect to that deeper inner knowing, which is going to activate more insight. Yes. And I love what you said earlier, Jen, and I'm looking forward to reading the article around that confidence. Like, for me, at least, like, we have a responsibility as professionals to really know where is our growth edge and what is that step? What is that small step to support you? And maybe it's that experimentation. Maybe it's going and taking a somatic training course, if that's where you're going, whatever that is. But that's why it's also inbred in our core competencies that we as a coach will continue to learn and develop. Because just like we grow and evolve, which is a big part of my work, is supporting people through change, through transitions in their own evolution, we have to also be adapt to that ourselves. And what does that look like for us? Oftentimes will be reflected to us based on the conversations in our rooms and where we want to stand out and leave our legacy or create our mark as leaders, as coaches.
Yeah. Well, and I think in a context of change, I'll just bring us back to where are we right now, right? To really create engagement in an era of lowest trust, complex change, chaos. I'll use the word again. It's like to engage can feel like a very risky process. It is our responsibility as people who are bringing groups of people together from different backgrounds, different walks of life, to really make sure that the safety is there, that the trust is there within the group. And that means, again, people want to be seen and heard in a way that works for them, period.
Yeah. I think what you said is really important, just to pause and to hear that. Like, really, our role as coaches is to create that container of trust, safety, and connection.
Yeah. And in the world right now, we're not seeing a lot of pockets of that. No. If anything, people are going inwards, are having a very individualized experience. And what will that mean for humanity on a much greater level? Yeah. So again, I think it's interesting. I'm also continuing to read Boyatzis's book on the science of change, right? And I should have, it's just not in my purview, but there was a great great quote that he had that I was looking at just a while ago, but change causes people to go inward. And so our work as coaches of many is about helping people find the bridge from the in to the out, from the individual reflection to the action. And so you might want to also listen to that bridge from awareness to action, because part of change is about getting into action from the awareness. So engagement looks different at different stages of the coaching arc.
Yeah.
As we go as well.
Yeah. So just for those who are curious about that bridge episode, that's episode 7. That bridge between action, awareness, and can I add one layer to this this conversation? Because I think part of that whole container of trust, safety, and connection, which it's very much known in the coaching conversation, but I think it's worth saying it explicitly, is that co-creation. This is like, yes, our role is to create that trust, safety, and connection. And part of doing that is also in the creation of co-creating. Where do we want to go? What does engagement look like? But really that empowerment of the group's voice, the individuals in the group voice. In group coaching, everyone is on their own individual bus. And it's not for us as the coach to know where the bus is going. It's for us, through that trust, safety, and connection, through that confidence, through that conversation, using these different ways of engaging to activate people to even step forward and say, I want to take the bus here. And in a group conversation, you're going to have different people wanting to take the bus in different directions. And the role of that group coach is to go, and where's the common thread? And trusting that everyone is going to get where they're going to get on their own individual bus. And I think that's it's what I love about group coaching is that tension. In my world, I call it the tension.
Yeah, it is a tension.
And, that's the power of the group.
Yeah.
Is everyone gets to drive their own bus. And as I'm driving on my own bus, I'm also listening to what my peer is saying that might actually have some impact on how I steer my bus. If I go up the mountain or if I go in towards the river, I think that's the magic of it.
And it's different speeds and different routes. And again, as a coach and as a group, we're only together for part of the journey. We're not there for the rest of the journey. So coaching really is a tool of empowerment. Right. And I think in today's discourse, we need to be explicit with that. Will it always be welcomed? No, not in current reality. But as a coach, how are you ensuring that, people are feeling well supported in their journey, however long you are together for that journey? Because really, it is about making your own adventure. And you get to decide, are we in the mountains? Are we down on the river? Are we out on the coast? Where is this journey taking us? And what are the appropriate tools? What am I bringing in? What am I doing for memorability, right? Part of what we're doing in a couple weeks, and you'll listen to this afterwards, but mid-February 2025, we're having the first of a series of quarterly workshops, and it's all about boosting memorability in coaching. And so again, as people come on to Zoom and Teams, how do they know that this 45 minutes or this hour and a half, however much time you have, is different? That is really at the core of this whole question of engagement. How do you ensure that people leave going, wow, I'm so glad that I took this time today to really connect in with my peers, whether they're part of a team, whether they're part of a group, because it's those micro moments that have the shift, that create the shift. Yet we have so much around us that creating those micro windows, it's a challenge in today's world, but it's a good challenge because it really can shift everyone's trajectory in so many amazing ways. Yeah. So I hope people have gotten a very practical sort of look at this, right? We've given you a number of different podcasts to listen to. Think about what engagement means for you. Think about the doorways that you're using, you're not using. Even something like metaphor, which we've touched on a number of times, it's not just about asking the client, what's the metaphor, right? What's the metaphor there? Not everyone's going to respond to that. So do you bring visuals? Do you bring like the new dice set? Do you What do you do to help people expand their thinking out of the current
Beautiful.
way they're looking at the world?
Beautiful.
Any inquiry for today?
I think just building off of what you just said is I really encourage listeners to really self-reflect on what does engagement look like to you? Where are you activating it? Where's their opportunity? And really, where would there be even greater impact with engagement? What's the impact with more engagement? That's really like that self-reflection, and check out our various tools and resources, because you've created a whole product line to support engagement. I've got all of mine in Italy. I'm just waiting for the dice. Someone's got to come back over to Italy, or I got to come to you again, but really, what are the tools and resources you can use to activate that?
Yeah. And so for people who are interested, what is the place? It is not groupcoachingessentials.ca. It is not potentialsrealized.com. It's Conversation Sparker. So wouldn't it be nice to wrap up this episode maybe with a couple of charms? We haven't used the charms. And even if you're listening to this, so the charms are little tokens, literally little manifestations of metaphors. This is one of the newer charm sets. So Evana, you might be like, I haven't seen these before, because these are part of the new charm, the 2025 version of the charm set. How many would you like? 1, 2, or 3?
Let's do 2.
Let's do 2. Let's see what my fingers pull out. So, I love this. So we've got the web. We've got a web, which again, part of our theme today, it's been about connection. It's been about bringing all voices into the room. And I think we had this on another call, so I'm going to just go in and pull another one. Okay. And then I'll tell you what the other one was. You know what? Let me just go. Well, the other one, it's fire. It's fire. So fire. So think about fire. Fire is my future self, which is interesting. That's a whole other conversation. But fire and the web. So for those that are familiar with the coaching superpower framework, I find it interesting that catalytic firecracker and ecosystem connector really came out in this conversation. What are you connecting in with the web and with fire?
The web for me, as it relates to engagement, to me is really presencing there's a spider in the web, but there's a full web, like whether it be your support network, because a lot of the work that I do really supports people in going like, who are your support? Where is that support system?
What is the web?
So for me, where's the intentionality with that as it comes to the group, right? How do I create that space in the group? So that's what the web is for me. And for me, the fire, the word that I wrote right away was just ignite. How do I activate engagement? How do I awaken conversations of transformation through different engagement, whether it be tools or even virtual tools? So it's that activation, igniting.
Activate, and that's why we call it Activate Your Group and Team Coaching Superpowers as a 14 CCE learning program.
Yeah.
It's, activation is the first step, but then there's the amplification. And I have to say, just, part of what we've been talking a lot about at the Amplify Coaching Biz Mastermind in the last 3 months now. Wow, 3 months has been, how do you amplify that, right? It's one thing to get the spark, but then part of engagement is amplifying your abilities as a coach, but also creating that context for your learners to really amplify, and amplify means to magnify. It means to 10x sometimes what you're doing. So,
I'm also hearing like amplifying your group coaching program, like whether that means like, what is the next program that builds off of this one? How can you continue to support your participants, right? Like that is part of the engagement, is oftentimes when people buy from people they love, know, and trust. And so what does that look like in terms of engagement with you on a longer term basis? Because in group coaching, you come together for a definitive time, but what is the next step is also what I heard.
Yeah. And that is part of the journey that we take with our clients. Now, we are not creating dependency, but that person is going to need something next. What is that? And that's
Yeah.
really what we do at Amplify, is really look at the big picture of your work, your landscape, how your different things fit together. Because there will be a bridge, like engagement. There's a bridge. And maybe the bridge is like, and we did this at the Coaching Business Booster
Mhm.
in December. We'll do it again in mid-June at the mid-year booster. We'll look at like, what kind of bridges are there? I think that's an important inquiry.
Beautiful.
And we actually did a community call on that last year. So we could keep talking, but we know, listeners,
could.
that you love like a half hour. Hope that you found today valuable. We're back in a couple of weeks for our next episode. And as always, here's our request to you. Please like this. Please comment on this. Please share this with your peers, because like the power of connection, this whole ecosystem of learning, of communication, only gets strengthened as we share it with others. So
Yeah.
thanks, Evana, for your time today. Always
Thank-
enjoy our Tuesday mornings as we sit down to talk about our group coaching and team coaching world. All right, everyone, have a good one. Take care.
Bye for now.